Could some imitation training programs be holding back communication skills? Did you know in 2006, Ingersoll and Schriebman published an article about the limitations of traditional do this imitation training? It's wild to think that that was almost 20 years ago. They identified 4 limitations of traditional do this imitation training. The first one is that do this imitation training is done in a way that's highly structured and artificial, and it's limiting generalization. The second limitation is that imitation is brought under the stimulus control of the instruction, do this, instead of the point to point correspondence of observing someone doing something and then doing the same thing as them, which can limit, again, generalization when we're expecting people to imitate when that instruction, do this, is not present. The third limitation was that once reinforcement is faded, we tend to see a decrease in imitative responses, meaning that the behavior is not, again, being brought under proper stimulus control, but instead children are responding based on accessing that reinforcement and not true functions of imitation. And the fourth one, which is the one I most frequently talk about, and we are going to dive in a little bit deeper on in this video, if you want to hang out, is it doesn't take into account the socio-communicative function of imitation. What does that mean? It means when children are first learning to imitate as infants, imitation serves a socio-communicative function. It's the very basic foundation of building that experience of a back and forth conversation. So even though an infant may not be vocalizing or communicating in many ways, that initial exchange where an infant does something, the parent imitates, the infant repeats, and they go back and forth, whether it's with sounds or facial expressions and eventually body movements, builds that foundation for how early conversation occurs. It's the very first experience that a human has with this reciprocal shared enjoyment type of interaction. When we focus on do this imitation training, not only are we hoping that imitation will develop based on just the observational function, we are completely not even concerned about building those social communicative skills. Gaze shifting, shared enjoyment, joint attention, reciprocal back and forth interactions, like all of that is out the window. And we're taking away, especially if we're working with 2 and 3-year-olds, that naturalistic opportunity that these children would have of that initial back and forth exchange. And we really need to think about what that means. What does that mean for our clients? If I'm spending time working on do this imitation training, sitting at a table with objects or body movements that are completely arbitrary, non-meaningful, using physical prompts and creating this learning history of you do what I do, but there's no communicative aspect to it. A, they're not learning imitation in the way that it typically develops. And B, again, we're suppressing that opportunity to experience that interaction. Research hasn't been done on this yet, but learning doesn't happen in a vacuum. If we're allocating time and we're creating these learning histories where we're teaching someone you imitate because you just do what I do, and there's no inclusion of the socio-communicative aspects of imitation, we are downgrading the value of social communication for populations that typically don't have the opportunity to engage in social communication. Like that's the whole reason that accessing the world in the way that they would want to, that would be most meaningful and joyful and beneficial and least amount of stress for them, we are disrupting that. Instead of taking the time to really try to understand how can we build these social communicative opportunities? How can we connect with our clients and have those same experiences with them that other children have with their caregivers and teachers? How can we do that? And instead of doing that, we're actually creating the opposite. We're like, oh, that part doesn't matter. We're just going to physically guide them and teach them in this very artificial way to do what I'm doing and completely disregard the importance of this crucial human skill of social communication. We have a better understanding of the importance of social communication skills and really building those in order to teach self advocacy, to create lower stress learning environments. So, now that we have that information, we really need to be making the shift. Ingersoll and Friedman pointed out these issues way back in 2006, and obviously were, groundbreaking at that time because everyone was already doing imitation training and the way that they were. But in 2024, there's even more research to support the idea that we have to break away from the very artificial, overly structured, do this imitation training.